There's something so magical about a fairy garden. I'm going to share just how easy it is to create your own. Pick a pot that is wide and not too deep. Make sure it has a drainage hole. There are so many darling accessories for fairy gardens available. I'll link to some of my favorites below. But I already had polymer clay on hand and I love working with it, so I figured I would make my own accessories. Plus, I was able to customize my scene exactly how I wanted it. Since it's too cold outside to plant a real garden, I'll have fun by planting this little fairy garden instead. I made some carrots, lettuce, cauliflower, and some little tiny tomatoes. I love working with polymer clay because it doesn't ever dry out. It stays nice and soft until you bake it. You can find it at any craft store, even Walmart. I'll link to some on Amazon below. I made a little clay wagon and drew on some wood grain texture with a toothpick, some little clay wheels and a handle, and it was almost ready to haul little veggies. Of course, a fairy gardener also needs some tools. A spade shovel and a little rake will do the trick. For the door to the fairy shed, I used the same technique as the wagon and drew on some green texture. I used polymer clay glue to adhere the doorknob, and then I molded it to the branch before baking. The clay bakes in the oven for about 15 minutes. While it was baking, I made the little raised garden bed with sticks from my yard. When the clay was done and had cooled, I painted the door and the wagon. I slightly watered down the paint. The paint that settles into the grooves will be darker, and that's what gives it the wood grain look. I cut a branch on our miter saw so that it would have a peak and used these craft sticks to make the wood shingles. I decided to kind of stagger them a little bit so it looked a little bit more rustic. I glued them on with hot glue. For the ridge piece, I used a thicker craft stick. I stained the roof, but watered down paint would work too. I glued on some moss to give it an aged look and to kind of give it more of a woodland feel. I didn't want the shed to tip over, so I buried it clear to the bottom of the pot. Now comes the fun part, adding all the little details to the space. Choose plants that grow slowly and that stay relatively small. Eventually you will have to repot the plants, but if you choose wisely, you can enjoy your fairy garden longer before having to change the plants out. For the raised bed, I used dirt from my actual garden outside. The potting mix was too fluffy and I worried it wouldn't hold the veggies in place very well. Pebbles make the perfect garden path. I had so much fun planting my miniature garden. And check out this tiny tomato cage my son soldered for me. It was the perfect size for my tiny tomato plant. This baby tears plant will grow over the side and be so cute. It will spread over time though, so I need to be prepared to trim it every now and then. It's time to fill the wagon with the harvest. Look at those tiny tomatoes. A little snail and some mushrooms, and my indoor fairy garden is complete. Make sure to check out the blog for even more details. Have you ever made a fairy garden?